Well, I think we'll proceed then. Jonah, we all just watched, or in my case, rewatched 31 Candles here at the Spokane Jewish Film Festival.
Wow.
Yes, indeed.
Exciting.
You've heard of it.
I'm on the
I'm
right
on the
Zoom
right
link
Zoom
then.
link
Yeah.
then. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful you could join us from, I assume, New York City. Am I right?
Yes, you're
Yes,
catching
you're
me
catching
live
me
here in
live here in
Greenpoint,
Greenpoint,
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Oh
By
my
the way,
gosh. I
By the
used
way,
to play.
forgive me. I'm
No, no,
there's
go
a little
ahead.
bit of
a little bit of
feedback.
feedback.
Oh
My
dear.
my
Okay. Well, we have a mic, so hopefully it won't be too bad. I used to play kickball in Greenpoint, but that was 20 years ago, so I'm sure it's changed a bit.
Yeah, but it also
But
feels
also
very much
feels
like
very
an
much
old
like
New
an old New
York, which
York,
is,
which is,
of course,
of course,
lovely.
lovely.
It is nice. Okay, well, let me go ahead and I'm going to start out with a question, but then I encourage audience members, if you have a question or comment, you can raise your hands, and I might not be able to get the mic all the way to you, but I can always repeat your question louder if I need to. So, Jonah, I just want to start off by saying you have worked a lot in the romantic comedy genre. You've made Christmas rom-coms, non-Christmas rom-coms, a rom-com called Xmas, and now a very Jewish rom-com. And I'm wondering why now, why at this point in your career, the narrative in real life, how much it aligns with Leo's, just in terms of getting around to exploring Jewish identity in a big way in your filmmaking. I'm curious why now.
Totally.
Totally.
I'm just gonna
I'm just
do
gonna do
this
this
while I'm
while I'm
talking, and then I'll put
talking,
it
and I'll
back
put it
in
back in
after I'm
after
done,
I'm done,
so I
so I
don't hear
don't hear
myself talk
myself
again.
talk again.
That's okay.
Sounds
That's
good.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
well, first off,
well,
thank
first
you
off,
to
thank you to
everybody
everybody
for
for
being here
being
tonight
here
to
tonight
watch
to
31
watch 31
Candles. It
Candles.
means the
It means
world
the
that you're
world
in
that
a
you're in a
theater and you're
theater and you're
watching the
watching
film
the
on a
film
large
on a large
screen.
screen.
The
The
idea for
idea.
making a movie that sort of explored my Jewish heritage was really after having made Xmas, which is of course a Christmas film about a small family in um, Minnesota, and I wanted to make something. Oh, that's better. Okay. Um, I wanted to make something that spoke to my family and spoke to my upbringing, and there are a lot of wonderful Jewish films out there, and I felt as if the Jewish rom-com really hadn't seen a lot of love since Crossing Delancey. I feel like we used to get a lot of really great movies that sort of were Jewish adjacent romantic comedies. And I looked in the mirror and said, what's a movie that my grandma sort of would have been really proud of me for making? And that's when the idea of a 31-year-old who has a bar mitzvah sort of came to be. And of course, it was something that scared me. It was something that I had never personally done, and um, I wanted to be challenged emotionally and physically in my own life, as well as the production of the film itself.
Any questions or comments from the audience so far? Okay. I will proceed then, but do let me know if you have any. We have shown a number of comedies over the years at the festival, and I'm wondering, from your vantage point, how do you make a Jewish comedy without overdoing the Jewish stereotypes?
Mm.
Because there's an extent to which, after watching a lot of American Jewish comedies in the last few years, I'm wondering, is some small amount of stereotyping almost necessary because it's hard to distinguish distinctly recognizable Jewish mannerisms or tendencies that may help a Jewish audience feel seen and understood from stereotype that is either problematic or at least not helpful? Does that make sense? Like, how do you walk that line?
It's a really astute point, and perhaps applies to like all sort of films that maybe are aimed at a demographic or a religion or a race or something like that, where can you avoid stereotype completely? I think you're right. I don't think you can. I think because perhaps at least sometimes in our case like yeah, okay, we go to Barney Greengrass on the Upper West Side, or the Black and White Cookie. These are ultimately part things of our life, or my life particularly, also that I enjoy and that I want to put in the movie because there's a linked um there's a reason. My grandma would always give me chocolate chip cookies, and you're casting actors, Judy Gold, incredible comedian who has been in quite many Jewish sort of comedies, and Caroline Aaron and Jackie Sandler, who is married to Adam Sandler. So I think you're actually spot on. I think there is ultimately something unavoidable about some sense of stereotyping, but I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. I think that sometimes it's very funny to see a specific ism um, on screen that allows us to relate to what we're watching. But also, I'll say this about 31 Candles. 31 Candles, the inspiration for this film cinematically, show of hands, and I can't see anyone, but raise your hand if you've seen the movie Marty, um, with Ernst Borgnine film.
See, 1939, is that right? It's Ernest Borgnine?
1950s.
1950. You know, I was almost there. Okay.
Almost there.
But Ernest Borgnine?
Yeah, the Ernst Borgnine film Marty was a movie that I watched that really sort of inspired what this movie could be, which is, that movie is sort of about a guy who lives with his mom and he wants to be with a girl, and all of his friends say, you can't be with this girl. And that's the movie, but it's this beautiful performance and it's sort of exploration of someone in their, early 30s, who's sort of a Peter Pan character, but needs to grow up. But that was a big inspiration for this film, and then tonally, I'm looking at whether it's, The Lady Eve by Preston Sturges, who I told our amazing actress Sarah Coffey, I said, go look at Barbara Steinweg in that film. And that's kind of what I want you to embody. So a lot of the references for this movie, even visually or thematically, aren't necessarily Jewish films. They're films of older Hollywood, I would say, because those are the movies I love and still watch to this day, and they kind of just don't make them like that anymore. Hopefully, there's some people nodding their heads that might agree with that. And yeah.
Well, thank you. You anticipated a question I had, which was what films might have given you inspiration. So thank you for getting a step ahead there. Um, all right. Well, I was curious how a writer director decides to cast himself or not. How do you make that decision? And beyond that, to cast yourself in the lead, I'm wondering if that was a process, or did you know from the start that you would play Leo?
I was cheap. I was not going to cost myself any money. So there was a budgetary reason. I think that there are other reasons. There was that when the other romantic comedies I've made, I've always found that the leading male characters are really good, but one of the things they really care about is how they look. And some of them are acting, try to act very cool or suave, and not many of them want to fall in a banana peel, or talk to a puppet rat. And there's usually a lot of pushback saying, why would I do this? This is silly. This is dumb. And to me, this is the quirkiness of the film. And so I knew that I wasn't director Jonah and actor Jonah were never going to give each other a problem. And I think budgetarily, I think story wise, it was a very personal story. I view every movie I make as sort of a personal art project. Ultimately director, sure, it is a group. There are many people that work in a movie, and it's incredibly important to acknowledge the cast and the crew. And I'm the luckiest director in the world with the crew that we have on 31 Candles. But if a movie is panned by critics or loved by critics, the director gets blamed. And ultimately, the director spends the most time with the film. In this case, I've spent my entire life with this movie, particularly spent the past 4 years with it, from raising the financing to shooting it to editing it to even now our conversation today. So I think there was an element of just making it easier for the process. I knew that as the actor, I would show up to the Q&As and I would push the movie out there. And sometimes when you make an independent film, you can't afford to have your actors fly into a Q&A session or post on social media, these things that can sort of help the movie get out there. And I just want to avoid any sort of conflict.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. We have a question. Rebecca, go ahead. And if we can't all hear it, I can always repeat it.
I think you should repeat it. But my question is, how is the approach different for a rom-com that has a Christian theme versus a Jewish theme, aside from references? Like, is there ideology or standpoint that is different for him?
Let me try to summarize. So are you referring specifically to the Christmas movies?
Yeah, or any rom-coms.
Okay. So what is different in terms of the approach to a Jewish-themed rom-com than to, say, a Christmas-themed rom-com or a rom-com without any Jewish themes to it? Does that sound right? Okay, that's the question.
A great question. Here's what I'll say. I'm not necessarily an expert, because I think in general, the rule we're told in film school is, comedies end at a wedding and dramas end at a funeral. And for the most part, most rom-coms end with they gets girl or girl gets boy, or whoever, it ends happily, or there's a wedding, or someone gets married, or it's the final kiss. Now 31 Candles, he's surrounded by friends and family, which maybe there's a link there. Maybe that's like there's some sort of Jewish undertones to that ending comparatively to Xmas, the Christmas movie I made for Amazon, where it very much ends with them kissing at the doorstep under the mistletoe. So it is a little bit rooted in like the very obvious traditional elements. I would say that in both cases, both 31 Candles and Xmas, we had a scene in Xmas where we shot in a church, and the amount of different opinions from experts of Christianity or various religions surrounding that, everyone had their own opinion on how something was supposed to go, or how someone was supposed to stand, or dip something, or hold something, or pray to something or someone. And when we made 31 Candles, it was no different. Everyone had a different interpretation and a different opinion on the way something should go, which to me is pretty ironic and funny that we all ultimately have particular views, and everyone's kind of got an opinion no matter what you're celebrating, whether it's the Godfather Part 1 or the Godfather Part 2. And we don't talk about the Godfather Part 3, so references to Candles.
Yes, indeed. I'm sure everyone's minds were racing to figure out what corresponds to the Godfather Part 3 in that analogy.
Yeah.
We can only speculate. Any other? Oh, yeah, we do have some questions. All right, let's go here and then here. So go ahead, sir.
My name's Louis, and my question for Jonah, two quick ones. They're quick. Where was the synagogue that you filmed the final scene in? And was the relationship with your grandmother in the film autobiographical? Was that reflective of your own relationship with your own grandmother?
Okay, so where was the synagogue that was the location for the bar mitzvah scenes? Yeah, and then was the relationship of Leo to his grandmother similar, somewhat autobiographical in terms of your own relationship? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll go backwards. So for my grandmother, it's incredibly autobiographical. That's probably the most, rewarding part of this process, is that her name was Lila Cadner. She told me, the quote she would always tell me is, "You know what to do." She does not have a park bench in Central Park, unfortunately. We'll make that happen. And, so that whole relationship is incredibly spot on to the way I interpreted our relationship. And we talked about romance all the time. We talked about love and dating. And so that was very personal. Same with the divorced parents. That also is pretty personal. In terms of my experience, obviously it's personal, but it's universal. I've had many, many, many people come up to me and say, "That's how I talk to my grandma, and this reminds me of my parents." And that's the intention. The intention is that by being personal, you actually are being quite universal. And then we filmed those scenes at Anshe Hased on 100th Street on the Upper West Side in New York City. I think it's like 100th and West End Avenue, or maybe Broadway. Really beautiful.
New York geography is always fun. Katie, you had a question.
Thank you. So my name's Katie. I have a question about maybe your next film, or the next film in the universe of Leo and Ava Shapiro. The movie ends with a look at potentially a Hanukkah movie. So is there going to be a Hanukkah movie in this universe of Leo, or is there a Hanukkah movie coming up in your real life?
So we're talking about either a Leo Cadner extended universe or cinematic universe, or is there a real life analogous development coming with a Hanukkah rom-com or otherwise Hanukkah movie? Does that sound?
Yeah.
It's a great question. There is an alluded Hanukkah movie from my producer in the film, played by Larry Owens, who of course wants me to go from Christmas films to Hanukkah films, the Hanukkah hug, from Christmas kiss to Hanukkah hug. There is no planned Leo extension in terms of the universe, but a Hanukkah rom-com is one that I've very much wanted to explore. And I'm not sure. I mean, the movie I'm writing right now is a film about, again, sort of inspired by my parents. It's a film called Young at Heart. And it's about two 70-year-olds that are divorced but good friends, and one day they wake up in their younger bodies, 20-something-year-old bodies, and they must decide, will they go through life together again, or will they do it a different way? And it's kind of big meets something's got to give, but it's a really fun opportunity for, a younger actor to embody someone slightly more mature and to use that breadth of knowledge that you have about what you're looking for romantically, but have to enter the world of modern dating where you have the apps and the new vocabulary that comes with it. So that's what I'm working on right now. That there will be a Hanukkah scene, but it's not technically a Hanukkah.
I love a high concept rom-com. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like truly like it's that sounds like a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question in the back. Go ahead.
Actually, it's not a question.
Oh, a comment.
Yes, a comment. Two questions ago, he had made a statement that he is not an expert. I have to disagree with him. I love this movie. And I'm not Jewish, but I have many Jewish friends. I surround my friends are Jewish. So I think he's an expert. And I would love to see more of his work.
Okay, so did you hear that? Did you?
That's
That's
very
very
kind.
kind.
Yeah.
I heard, yeah.
Yeah.
That one
That
I
one I
heard
heard
loud and clear. Yeah, that's very kind, and I appreciate you saying that, and that means the world to me. I mean, that's the kind of comment that has me leave this Zoom and go upstairs and open up Final Draft and keep writing. So thank you for saying that.
Wonderful. Yeah, our audience inspire us for sure. Yes, John.
I'm John. Was there a reason other than just pure comedy in casting the female lead as somebody very tall?
Did you get that one, Jonah?
Yeah. So Sarah Coffey, who plays Ava Shapiro, is in fact 6'1", and I'm 5'8", although I probably appear a lot taller on screen. And got a good laugh. I knew that was gonna get I cast her. Well, here's the thing. I cast her because I thought she was incredible. Her and I had literally, we had met because I saw her on the internet, on TikTok and Instagram, and I slid into her DMs. And I said, I'd love to meet with you and talk about what you want to do in your career. And I thought she really reminded me of, an actress from an older generation, whether it was the Barbara Steinwick or, just someone who felt like you could see her in black and white or in color, and she was physical, and the way she said words was interesting and new. And yet her being taller than me, not to give too much into the symbolism of the film, but I guess this is a Q&A, so I can do this. There is a running visual motif of Leo constantly looking up at things in the world. The opening shot of the movie is him looking up at a dinosaur. And that's like the movie in a nutshell. It's him looking up at this thing of the past, this thing that we don't even know what it really was or how it really looked. Because as you may or may not know, dinosaur skeletons are constantly being changed around after new science that we get. Not that we need to get into my paleontology passion on the Zoom. We can save that for another Q&A. But it's a visual representation of what the whole movie's about, which is like romanticizing the past. You saw it with the opening building shots as well during the opening title credits, where that's ultimately Leo's POV as he's looking by New York City. And the final shot of the film is Leo looking over to New York from New Jersey, matching in height roughly with the World Trade Center in terms of the parallaxing effect of the camera. So there's always been something I've tried to get across of Ava Shapiro being physically taller than he is, because he's kind of always looking up at this person. And then the way we shot the final scene, in terms of those close-ups, it was supposed to feel more even. And yeah, that's kind of the intention. It worked out pretty perfectly when I thought Sarah was both the emotional core of who Ava Shapiro was, but also physically worked in a really convenient way.
That's a great answer. Thank you. And thank you, John, for the question. Other questions or comments for Jonah? Okay, well, I'd like to do another, if that's all right. So you kind of addressed this already a bit, but you mentioned there are so often pretty conventional happy endings to romantic comedies. That is often what the audience is kind of buying when they buy a ticket to a romantic comedy. They're getting a sense of, I'm going to leave this with a happy ending. It's going to be an upper, right?
Right.
And that's got to be tempting for any filmmaker who's making one. But this film, as you alluded to, has the poignancy of a sweet but uncertain situationship, right? And also appreciating community, even if romance doesn't happen the way we hope. So I wonder, was there a point in the development of this project where there was that temptation to give a more conventional happy ending? And if so, what brought you the other way?
No, it's a really great point, and it's we would constantly debate, hey, what if we just made it so they ended up together? Like that's what people want a rom-com. You're exactly right. People want the happy ending, and whether or not it ends with a kiss, I mean that to me is kind of my favorite romantic comedies and favorite movies are the ones that end emotionally the way that we want them to end, but logistically it's different. I'll give an example. Billy Wilder's The Apartment, which ends with shut up and deal, which is of course subtext for I love you, Um, Casablanca, this is the start of a wonderful relationship. We'll always have Paris. They don't end up together, but in a way they do, in a way you knew that they still cared about each other. And those to me are my favorite endings, that are able to emotionally land the plane. And I felt like our ending did emotionally land the plane, just maybe not in the way you saw. You saw that he was surrounded by friends and family, and Ava was there to sort of see him grow up in this capacity and accomplish this task. And I think you didn't need a kiss. You didn't need to have that moment. So that's sort of where we landed there. But trust me, it was always on our mind to just say, what if they ended up together? But I don't think they would have. I don't think, it would have been, it wasn't right for them. But I do want to make sure I make a movie at some point that just has a very clear ending that's happy for these two characters.
Yeah, there'll always be a place for that. Yeah, that makes sense. Are you up for a few more, Jonah?
Oh, please, yeah, we're fine
okay.
here, yeah.
So, any new questions or comments?
People have
Otherwise, I'll proceed. Okay. So let's see. Did you know from the beginning that there would be a surprise or twist regarding Ava's sexuality and her being in a committed relationship? If not, how did you get there?
Yeah, we always knew because there Ava is a character who's loosely based off an amalgamation of people in my life who they already are real. Not and there's not one specific Ava Shapiro, but there's maybe a Sarah, Jessica, and another Sarah that when you plug them all together equal Ava Shapiro. And so we took a little bit of that. That was always sort of in the script. And we thought present a modern contemporary perspective of what a Brooklyn situationship was going to look like for someone like Leo to fall in love with.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. So you've talked about Billy Wilder. I was going to say, what are some rom-coms that inspire you? I thought of The Apartment, actually, in watching the film a second time, so I'm glad you mentioned that. How do you get a Jewish-themed film made and distributed? Is it more difficult because it's considered niche than non-Jewish themed film? And what's approaching the Jewish Film Festival circuit like? And I say this as someone who's worked with distributors who distribute almost exclusively Jewish films and distributors that don't specialize in that. It's a whole particular world, I would think. I'm curious to hear your impressions.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful point. It is a challenge. It is a challenge because I pitch our movie as a Jewish Christmas film. And that's going to raise eyebrows, to anyone who's listening to what I'm saying. I say it's a modern independent romantic comedy that's somewhere between, Marty and, Annie Hall or whatever. And everyone's like, okay, these are very strange references. And let's talk about the financing. First and foremost, everyone who made this movie, there was 30 investors in this film. These 30 investors all actually took a shot on me in 2021. with my first film, Dating in New York, and they all made their money back. They all made double their money back. We went to Tribeca Film Festival, and we sold the movie to IFC, and you can currently go watch this movie on Tubi right now. It's called Dating in New York. And 4 years later, I called everyone back up and I said, would you want to invest in this movie? It's called 31 Candles. And so the financing came together pretty easily. It was, again, a lower budget film. And then, of course, there was a SAG strike, and we made the movie. And, you are definitely sort of branded as a Jewish film, and for better or worse. And it's definitely niche. And what I have found to be quite fantastic is the loyalty of Jewish audiences and non-Jewish audiences, people who actually still really care about romantic comedies, particularly indie films. The Jewish Film Festival circuit has been really a delight, whether that was going to the, JCC in Upper West in New York City or Minnesota, or, when we played in Delray, Florida, which I like to call the JCC of simply Florida as a total. We had 600 people come and see the film that weekend, and it was really amazing. And I think it's helpful to be within a niche, but anytime you have a movie, no matter what the movie is, there's a challenge to find an audience. That's the hardest part these days. Making the movie is the easiest thing. Having people care and find the movie and know when the movie is out, is the hard part. The amount of messages I get from people saying, "This looks so great. Can I, how do I go see it?" And I go, "Well, you just missed the theatrical run. I've just been telling, but that's not their fault. They don't see that information." And so that's the hard part, really, is just getting anybody to care. But it's been really, really heartwarming and a dream come true to even have anyone see the film on a big screen. Like, it's more than I could ever imagine.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do one more audience question, then I have one last question after that to finish up. Go ahead.
I actually don't have a question.
Oh.
I also have a comment. First of all, thank you very much. You have an amazing talent. There were so many different talented moments in that movie that made me happy. But the most amazing thing that I think I'll never forget is how you represented the Holocaust Museum in this movie. Because for me, that place was so depressing and horrible, and one of the most amazing places in the world, but so sad. And you showed it with some kind of light, that out of the sad, we still can have light. Thank you for that. I will not forget that piece in that movie.
Oh. Thank you for saying that. I'm emotional, and I didn't see anybody on the other end of this thing, but I appreciate you saying that. And it was as a priority to us to, both honor the museum and be respectful of the museum, yet also, as you said, bring light and positivity and a romanticism in a way that still felt like it was appropriate. And trust me, I mean, as we all know, that was not an easy day to film. Like that, especially the location scouting process was not easy, where I literally had to walk our entire crew through the museum, because it's you go through one door and the only way out is through the rest of the museum. So there's no sort of, you're not skipping any part. And I feel really grateful that they allowed us to film there. And we worked very closely with them to have that approval and to make something that we felt people would feel comfortable watching. And so thank you for saying that.
Thank you so much for that comment, and Leo for your Leo. I knew this was going to happen once. Jonah for your response. Thank you. Okay, so my last question to you is, among other ways, nostalgia is a major theme in the film, and you've talked about films from the past that you find inspiring. And I think in a way, maybe I'm wrong, you can let me know, shooting a New York film in New York, in a way, is a throwback in and of itself. I feel like we have a lot of films set in major American cities, and it's like, as an audience member, you're like, I think that's Vancouver. I think that's Vancouver. But this obviously is New York City. So I'm curious, what are the unique joys and challenges of shooting a film like this in New York City itself?
Yeah, nothing gets me going like a movie or a TV show that says it's New York City when it's not. I actually get quite upset because I think it's all a lie. I know movies are all fake, but even Lubitsch has a quote saying that, he's been to Paris, France, he's been to Paris Paramount on the Paramount lot, and he prefers Paris Paramount. But I think New York is different because you feel the energy. It's the extras, it's the size of the buildings, it's the crispness of the air. And everyone has their own New York. That's what I love. I love that Scorsese's New York is gritty and dangerous. And my New York, there's rats, but they're talking to you in an old-timey accent. And they're friendly. And your bodega lady is asking you for dating advice, and there's not a gunshot, within any mile of my movies. And so I believe that it's our duty, I think as any artist, this is a larger perspective I have as being an artist, is that my favorite artists are the ones that connected with the environment around them. So if you look at Monet, he's painting the lily pads outside of his house, and that became a huge part of his movement as an artist and his work. And to me, as a filmmaker, I want to film my movies in New York. I want to exhibit the movies in New York. When we showed this movie when it first came out, we did 3 weeks exclusively at the Quad Cinema, which allowed people from various boroughs to come see the film. And we were there for Q&As every single night. I would stay at the theater all day, greet people, whether it was one person or 50, as they entered and as they left. And that part is really important to me. It's just there is a connectivity between your art and the city. And again, when you film a movie in New York, you're getting such great production value. And it also just helps. I'll just say this, that, as someone who lives here, when I go to a restaurant or if I go to a location and I say, that looks really great, I introduce myself to the owner, and now I'm sort of making introductions to the community, and I'm going to say I'm going to come back and film a movie here. And for all I know, maybe you saw Barney Greengrass in this film and said, okay, now I got to go get that. Now I got to go eat that. And or the bodega, so hopefully it's bringing commerce like to a city in some capacity. Although New York doesn't need my independent films to get going. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jonah, I'm so appreciative that you took the time to talk with us today. I know you weren't able to see us, but I can tell you there were many smiles, and it meant a lot for us to finish the festival with your film. So thank you for the film and for joining us today for the Q&A.
I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come and see the film. Tell your friends about it. It'll be on streaming, I believe, March 8th. And we're on Letterboxd and IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. And if you have any positive words you want to say, those ratings help us get into the algorithm. And if I can be of any help to you, or if you want to ever share some words with each other, I always like to give out my email address, which is just my name @gmail.com. So it's just Jonah Feingold, JONAH FEINGOLD @gmail.com. And I'm always here, and you guys are family now. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my movie. This is the deal I get to make with my audience members, so it's an honor. Thank you.